So for a solid period of 2025, nearly every single day, I've been feeling like I was hit by a truck after just a couple of hours of deep work. Totally destroyed my mentality and I started to procrastinate on my work because I knew that I wouldn't be able to complete it even if I really tried, which obviously just reinforced the procrastination in the first place and made it even harder for me to keep pushing. But I was until I realized that the problem wasn't that I didn't try hard enough, I did. I just totally fucked and fried my mind with the things that I thought I got rid of 2 years ago. You see, I got too comfortable because I was making progress too fast, and I decided that this would be a proper time to step back a little bit and enjoy myself a little bit more. Like, what a stupid idea. Started having some takeaways, late nights, worse sleep, a lot of artificial food, not like crazy amounts because I still had some fundamentals in place, but generally I started to try and optimize for hard work, having more caffeine in and sleeping worse, kind of enjoying myself and believing that I can still work hard at the same time with it. Now, I would bet any amount that 99% of creators at some point have faced or are facing this exact same issue, where they kind of start to slack off and in a sense invisibly, which is the scariest thing. The scariest, and that's also the biggest danger because you literally have no clue why most of the time, or just simply refuse to admit it, which I admit that I was that second one. Because admitting that I fell into dopamine trap again after 2 relatively good and peaceful years would mean that I'm not as good at controlling those aspects of my life as I thought I was. Which is obviously a little bit of an ego hit, which nobody likes. But anyways, before we get deeper, let's talk about what dopamine actually is. Dopamine is your brain's motivation chemical. It's about pleasure, it's about pursuit, it drives you to seek rewards, chase novelty, and take action. Too much dopamine means constant stimulation, which results into mental fatigue, distraction, and inability to focus deeply. Now, the biggest danger of dopamine most of the time, and healthy dopamine, is that it does push you, but it does not care where or why. In one word, you could probably describe it as chaotic, which is obviously the last, like it's the opposite thing from what you want if you're building something, because you want structure. And the thing that I realized in 2025 so far is that it doesn't matter how hard you try to be productive. It's not really about how much you try to do, but instead it's about how much you try to not do, if that makes sense. You don't really need most of productivity tools and most of advice if you just simply focus on eliminating instead of adding stuff. It's not about really adding things to your life and instead just structuring them in a way so that it works in your favor instead of working against you. With that said, here's your exact plan to lock in and get rid of dopamine addiction, and I'm doing the same exact thing for the next 2 months so that I make sure that I don't waste the entirety of the summer. At the time of recording this, it's Tuesday, 1st of July. So depending on when this video comes out, I want you to dedicate the next 2 months of your life to completely reinventing the way you work, create if you're a creator, and or see life in general. The plan consists of 3 main pillars. The first one is starting the day with creation instead of consumption. I used to live like that for about 6 months back in 2024, where I would wake up at 5 a.m. I would go to cold shower, meditate, I would read, I would probably go on a walk sometimes or go for a run, and then I would sit down to write or script a video or do anything which is not requiring much physical effort but rather brain effort. The main rule was that I wasn't supposed to pick my phone up or check any notification, like anything, in the first 3 hours of the day. And so as we discussed in one of the previous videos, there are essentially 2 types of people in this world: passive consumers and active creators. And as I said, the first part of your day should always be dedicated to being a creator, not a consumer. It's your sacred time. It's not as much about the routine. You can ignore the cold shower, the running, the reading, the meditating if you really hate those things, but just make sure that you don't consume anything for the first few hours of the day. This also relates to food, but we're going to talk about that later in this video. Getting back to the point, it's important to understand that your true nature is to create. You are a creator of your life, not necessarily a content creator. The modern world has made it so easy to find something really pleasurable to consume really fast, at any hour of the day, most of the time for free. The world has become junk. Most of it. But that is the trap that sabotages you, me, the entrepreneurs who already made it, and every human on this planet. And the only thing that differentiates most people from those that actually make progress and achieve their goals is that they just are able to resist. To resist and make the state of creation a default. So if you've been struggling to produce quality work, I challenge you to wake up as early as you possibly can, 4, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., doesn't matter. Do your basic routine and start working straight away without breakfast, without consuming, without checking in on notifications or anything like that. You can literally take a piece of paper and a pen or open your notes app and write this thing down. Before you consume, create. Now the second pillar is killing the dopamine loops. So that's probably the number one thing that I get stuck in very often. Complete ruin of life, just complete destruction, the worst thing that can happen to you. So I want you to picture this. You wake up at around 10 a.m. with no alarm, and the first thing you do when your eyes open, you grab your phone and you start scrolling. You start checking notifications, you start replying to some random people, to your friends, to some random girl, or checking your crypto charts or whatever the fuck. Then you start scrolling TikTok, you see some softcore porn, and then it drives you to another website. And so the next next thing you know, it's like 1 p.m. already, and then you go to a kitchen to have some nice breakfast, which is totally horrible for you, with some sugar, cereal, and white bread, whilst watching the videos about how to be productive and how to start your online business. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? Well, that was my life, luckily 3 years ago. It still obviously hits me, but in smaller and more manageable ways, since I do have some fundamentals in place already, because, you know, the 2 years weren't for nothing. But I don't really think that you can completely get rid of this kind of dopamine loop in your life whenever, because once again, all people fall into this loop, some more, some less, some can resist. As I said, you have to increase your standards. Falling into that kind of loop is not acceptable. Falling into the loop where you just randomly start scrolling and liking some post, and then you notice it in just 5 minutes time and you just turn it off, that's completely okay. It's the kind of loop that everyone falls into once again. But the point I'm trying to make is that the situation that I described, the morning routine that I described, is the life of most people, which is really sad. And when I got out of that life and realized it, it scared the shit out of me. I just saw it from the outside and realized how horrible it actually is, and how many people in this world are trapped in those horrible dopamine loops. And probably the main lesson that I learned is this: don't act like most people, because if you do, you're by definition average. And the life of an average person is sad. Essentially, quitting dopamine loops just means not getting sucked into the cycle of repeated pleasure, especially before or whilst you're trying to focus/work. That's pretty simple. You can once again pull out a piece of paper and write it out. Now, moving on to the third pillar, which ties to our dopamine discussion as well: drop your stimulation levels. Once again, I can't stress this enough: avoid frying your brain. Because for me, it's funny, the more dopamine I get in the day before I get to the most important work of the day, the less I enjoy the work and the less I, as a result, get done, obviously. But not only that, it also transitions into the next day, into the next week, into the next month, because you kind of build this reputation with yourself where you don't get something done, and then all of those things kind of stack up, and that results into you being overwhelmed with the amount of things that you need to do, which also leads then to procrastination. That's a topic for a whole nother discussion, but that's also the danger that I'm sure you're familiar with. You probably experienced it as well if you are a creator, if you're posting something, or probably also if you're just a student, like whatever. It probably applies to most people. Imagine the first thing in the morning you do is watch porn. Massive spike of dopamine. Your body is like, whoa, damn, that was really good and high, I need more stimulation. But the problem is that now you have to do the exact opposite. You have to get out of your bed, and instead of chasing the dopamine, you actually have to go and produce some quality work. But because of that massive dopamine spike, you're now unable to focus for more than 15 minutes on anything, because it's not as pleasurable and it's not driving you to those heights as watching porn, for example. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about and why it's so dangerous. But dropping stimulation levels doesn't just mean avoiding porn, avoid scrolling on social media, avoid playing video games, having late nights and a lot of sugar. That's not only it, that's like the surface level. It means lowering the levels of stimulation in your life in general, in all areas. And not for just a day to detox yourself, but for weeks, for months. And I'm not saying, by the way, that you shouldn't do those things ever again. I would rather suggest to see it in a way where you are trying to once again build the reputation with yourself that you are a kind of person who is able to live and produce the work without those things. You need to know how to distinguish healthy and unhealthy dopamine. Why? Because unhealthy dopamine is what's probably ruining your life, and getting rid of 90% of sources of it would be the best decision you'll make. If you have ever seen those crazy crypto charts when the price kind of goes up and it kind of spikes up, and then with no time it kind of goes down below like the baseline where it started, it's like rock pool, I think it's called. If you like imagine your baseline right here, and then it spikes up above the baseline, drops below it, and from here, depending on what actions you take, it can either slowly recover or drop down further. And then from there, the same cycle goes on. It can either very slowly recover or drop down even more. And that's the reason why you should avoid it. That's me like just trying to scare you and myself. Now you might ask, Nas, you're talking about so many examples of unhealthy dopamine, but what are some examples of healthy dopamine? Well, if I had to name a single best source of healthy dopamine, I would probably say cold showers, or just cold water in general. The reason being is that it plays with your dopamine in a completely another level. Once again, imagine your baseline right here, you take cold shower, it also spikes up very rapidly, just as unhealthy dopamine, but then it does not crash the same way below your baseline. It actually lasts for much longer, and it just slowly goes down throughout the day. But yeah, to finish off, if there's one thing you take away from this video, make it be the first pillar of those three, which is creating before you consume. This is a literal cheat code. If you can discipline yourself to do just that at the beginning, to not overload yourself and once again get into this overwhelmed state when you just cannot do anything because you're too overwhelmed with the amount of things that you have to do, just try and do that tomorrow. But with that being said, if you found this video valuable, then don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to this channel, and also if you'd like to level up your physique and or focus, you can also apply to work with me one-on-one. Fill out the simple questionnaire, and if I think I can help you, then I will reach out to you by myself. Thank you for watching this video. I wish you an amazing day. Bye.